So, I do want to welcome a new friend of the channel, Fillipo from TacticalManagerTV, who is going to, come and help educate me as well as everybody else out here on the U.S. men's national team coaching search. I'm not the most well-versed in, our potential coaches and play styles. So I figured I'd take a chance and reach out, and, Tac was kind enough to answer me and agree to come on just to enlighten us a little bit on who he thinks is the top coach and top couple candidates that we're going after now. Tac, how are you?
I'm doing good, and hopefully I do know them, right? I mean, I wouldn't say I know all of them. I've been trying to cover as much as I can these coaches, and when we do hire someone, which while we're recording this, we still haven't, that's important to mention, we'll do a deep dive into that specific coach. But yeah, I do have a more superficial knowledge of each one just from basic research. But when we hire, we'll know a lot more about the coach even before, and hopefully we get someone sooner rather than later. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and I was listening to another podcast earlier today, and since we've hired, or since we lost in Trinidad and Tobago, we've actually had an interim manager for 26 out of 100 matches. That stat just blew my mind. That's not a good thing, right? That's a little bit of a lack of consistency. So I'm hoping we can get somebody in sooner rather than later and really help us find some stability in a new, more exciting play style than what we had under Greg, because that was that was hard to watch.
I want to add one funny thing about that stat you mentioned. So it was CBS Golazzo that put their podcast. Yeah. And they said they dug up that stat, but Daniel Smith, a friend of ours from Twitter, decent following, does great work covering a lot of the Americans abroad. He was the one that posted that stat, and they just kind of read it as if they did it. He does great work. I just wanted to give him some credit for that.
Absolutely. Give him one more shout out. What was his Twitter? Where did he find it?
I don't know the handle from the top of my head, but it's Daniel Smith. If people follow me, they'll see from time to time I retweet or I engage with him a lot on Twitter. So I've had him on the channel before too.
Perfect. We'll plug him in the description and everything. So credit to him for that, because I thought that stat was ridiculous. I mean, that's a quarter of the time we haven't had a solid manager, and when we did, it was Greg Berhalter. So it wasn't great.
So we never had a solid manager.
We never had a solid manager. We didn't have a stable manager. We'll say that. But yeah, that was brutal. And in this coaching search, my heart's been broken already. I've had a long conspiracy theory ever since Klopp announced he wasn't returning to Liverpool. I thought that was his half a step back to get into the national team kind of picture of things, because it's not the daily grind that we always see, right? And he wanted Pulisic at Dortmund. There were rumors of him wanting him at Liverpool, and I was like, this is the perfect matchup. This is it. This is the time we get Klopp, and then he flirts with us on 4th of July. He posts a picture, and then he rebuffs us, and it was just, it broke my heart, man. What did you think about that? Do you think there's any hope still with him?
Look, I don't know. I don't have any inside information on Klopp. All I know is what you know. We did reach out to him, in fact, and apparently he rejected it. I wonder how the rejection went about. Like, how was it? Was it more like, hey, I just don't want anything right now, right? Yeah. It's just like, I need a break from soccer, which is what he said when he left Liverpool. And he's clearly not taking any job. And then trust me, Klopp definitely has interest from many clubs.
Of them. All the clubs that he wants. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I wonder if it was that, or it was more like, no, I'm not interested in a national team job, or I'm not interested in the US specifically. I don't know how it went about. I don't think there's much hope for him this cycle. I mean, if given the opportunity, I'll take Klopp right now, but I don't think we would get him now. Now, to say he would never coach the U.S. men's national team, I don't think it's too crazy. Like, more towards his retirement, that he would say yes, live in the U.S. I don't think it's impossible. For this cycle, I think so. Unless U.S. Soccer was smart about it and just went, Klopp, what if we keep an interim coach for a year and you take over next summer and you have a year to prepare for the World Cup? I don't think that'll happen, but that would be the one scenario I would be okay with the whole interim coach we complain about. If it's 1 year to get Klopp,
we can wait. Yeah.
The problem is it was a bunch of interims to get Berhalter, and that's a big problem.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If we have that interim to make a big step up and get potentially the best coach available. I mean, the absolute best coach for in the world available, he's in that conversation, I'd be totally fine with that. But
Yeah.
if we end up with a Berhalter or a Cherundolo, I'd be pretty upset about that, and I would have my reservations. And it has come out that Cherundolo was just rumors and kind of MLS trying to pump up one of their potentially up and coming coaches, which he may be a good coach in the future.
Maybe.
He may be on the right path. I mean, LAFC has had success, right? But going from Klopp to Cherundolo is a big step down, and going from LAFC to the US men's national team, that's a big jump up as well. So I don't know, how you necessarily feel about it, but I would be kind of uncomfortable with that as well. I think it would be a little bit beyond him at this point, and the players, they're bigger than him at this point as well.
Yeah, everything you said, I agree. And then I want to add more to that. So everything you said, I'm okay. So I'm not going to expand upon that specifically, but other things too. If we were in the beginning of a cycle and we had 4 years, then maybe you go, hey, Cherundolo, let's give you 2 years. And then halfway through, if it's not doing well, we change. So we don't have that right now. Right now, it's more like whoever you hire now, whether it's going well or going poorly, he's going to the World Cup. And Cherundolo is a big risk. Like you said, maybe he is a good coach. Maybe he is. Or maybe he'll become a good coach. I'm not going to say he never will be. He had a lot of his coaching education in Germany. Definitely not a bad coach, and probably much better than Greg Berhalter, to make that clear. But we're 2 years away from the World Cup. That is probably the biggest one in U.S. men's national team history. We have the most talent we've ever had. We're hosting it, which is much different from '94, where didn't have a professional setup in the U.S. The players had to really work their way through to get there. Much different situation. And soccer is more popular in this country than '94 by a lot. So I don't think we have we can't really risk it that way. You can't go with Cherundolo and risk it with that. You have to go the best possible option that you can get. Maybe overpay a little bit. If there is a time to overpay, this is the time to overpay also.
Absolutely.
That's my take on it. I think Cherundolo has not proven that it can work. Now you're going to go to me and say, has Pellegrino Materazzo, for example, which we're going to talk about him in a second. Maybe I'll hold on that then. When we talk about him, I'll talk about him. But
yeah, we can draw that comparison then.
I'm not for it. I'm not saying never Cherundolo in the national team. I just think it's not the time.
Maybe not right now. And I
definitely
think
not right now.
Yeah,
definitely not right
now. In different circumstances maybe, but definitely not right now. And I think we agree on that. We would want to see us, shoot for the stars and get, the absolute best that we can. And right now, he's just not at that level. At least he hasn't proven to be. So I think we're okay there. From what your takes are, again, I'm not as in depth on the coaches as I am, with the players thus far, because I'm still getting into this as much as I am. If you had to, give our top 5, candidates in your mind, who do you think we're going after? Who do you think's realistic? And you don't have to rank them 1 through 5. Just say, I think it's these 5.
So top 5 that I want, or top 5 that I think they're talking to?
Top 5 that you think that we're talking to.
Okay, so let's go based off the reports that we believe in, that talking to people that I know within the federation, even though my access is super limited for multiple reasons. We know they talked to Pochettino, and we know Matt Crocker has worked with Pochettino in Southampton, so that's definitely one that they're considering, I would assume. Patrick Vieira, Fabrizio Romano reported, and he is unemployed, so I would assume they definitely talked to Patrick Vieira. Also worked in MLS, worked in Europe. Maybe not the ideal option, but they definitely talked to Patrick Vieira. Pellegrino Materazzo, I know he kind of tried to say, no, I'm not really into that. But from what I heard, he is interested, and he doesn't have an offer from U.S. Soccer. So what else was he going to say? He's still employed. He has to say it. So I think Materazzo is still a very realistic option. So those are 3. Trying to think of 2 more that they might be talking to. I'm wondering if they're talking to Thierry Henry or not. I'm not for it, but he has worked in MLS. He has said that he was interested in the past, so maybe they're talking to Thierry Henry. I don't think that would be unrealistic. Definitely not an option I would want. Cherundolo, I heard they haven't spoken to Cherundolo, or they are not interested in Cherundolo, which kind of makes sense, right? You aim for Klopp and Pochettino, and you settle for Cherundolo is a bit weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of ground in between those two, kind of categories.
I'm trying to think of who could be a fifth option that they would talk to. Maybe David Wagner, an
Potentially
American
back
in Europe.
there. Yeah, potentially.
Uh,
Hervé Renard, I've heard, a little bit there, and he's right
Herb
now
seems to
out.
be more of like a fan rumor, but yes, he is available.
He's available because
Uh,
he just finished up with the French women in the Olympics, right?
yeah, yeah, he
Okay.
took over the French women's for the World Cup and Olympics. He has had success with African nations,
Mhm.
even winning the African Cup of Nations twice. Has World Cup experience. Definitely a candidate that wouldn't take crap from the players and all that. I would hope they would at least talk to him.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't think he's the right option, but at least talk. So maybe those could be the ones: Pochettino, Materazzo, Herb Bernard, Vieira, and Henry. Thierry Henry probably are five that they talk to. I would hope they would also. I would not put it past them to talk to Gareth Southgate. I don't want that, but
Mhm.
Matt Crocker is close to Gareth Southgate. He has coached the national team for years, and I mean, he's unemployed. So I don't think that will happen. I hope it doesn't happen, but Gareth Southgate is definitely an option. And then one that I would want them to talk to, but I don't know if they did. We haven't seen any reports. Is I know some USMNT fans are going to be pissed at this because he didn't treat Pulisic the way many of us thought he should. But I don't think Thomas Tuchel would be a bad hire. I don't think he would.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something that has crossed my mind as well. I know Tuchel's available, but I also know that from what we saw, at Chelsea, it wasn't necessarily the most attractive style to me. And putting Pulisic at the right back when clearly there was some rifts there, that would concern me a little bit, but definitely an upgrade on what we've recently come out of. So, if we could start back at the beginning and look at Pochettino, why do you think he would be a good fit, and does he have any drawbacks in your mind?
Well, the drawback is he never coached the national team, as far as I know. So
Yeah, I haven't seen that success on that level yet.
so
And
you
yeah,
you can do well for club and not do well for national team, but go through some positives. Mainly from what I remember, Pochettino plays a lot of 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, which with our player pool, I think it suits, right? I know Berhalter used that a lot, but it's also not just about the formation, it's how you place the players in that formation, how rigid it is.
Mhm.
We've seen Pochettino teams that were good in possession and good in transition. So that's something we haven't seen with Berhalter, especially in transition. And in possession, we're very predictable. Pochettino, it hasn't been that way. He did get to a Champions League final with Tottenham, so it's not like he got there with a massive team
Yeah.
by any means. He is definitely a good coach. He's dealt with some big egos, right? Like Mbappe, Neymar. So the locker room itself, no player would be bigger than him in that sense, which we saw players kind of like almost bully Berhalter into playing them at times with the U.S. men's national team. That wouldn't happen to Poch. I think he's just a bright soccer mind and a big name. I think it would be a big hire, have a big impact in the program. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. Whether it'll be successful or not, only when you hire and you have the guy there to know. But again, it's a massive upgrade. He would be the most qualified U.S. men's national team coach we've ever had. Most qualified.
Okay, I agree. I can completely agree. And what you said about the formation versus the tactics, or in combination with the tactics, is going to be a big difference maker, right? We can flow through the middle, we can play throughout the wings. There's definitely an opportunity to mix that up. Whereas in the past, in this last cycle and a half specifically, we're playing down the wings, we're bombing down the wings and pumping crosses, and that was about it. And anybody with a decent amount of talent and a decent coach can defend against that. But if we can come at them from a couple of different angles, there's a bit of unpredictability there, and we can, diversify our attack and be a little bit more dynamic. So I would love to see that.
He's also an outsider. That's important.
He's also an outsider. Very important.
I think that's important because of the whole thing we talk about MLS influence, not in the roster itself, Berhalter was calling it, but just a guy that will challenge the establishment in terms of changing a bit of the culture within the federation, national team, youth teams, change all of that. An outsider does that. Klinsmann, with all his flaws, he did that. And I thought it was very important for the U.S. men's national team how Klinsmann challenged the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, there's a lot of issues of where he played the players and like position and just like decisions as a coach, right? There was a lot of issues, but the challenging the culture, Pochettino would also be doing that for sure.
Okay, and I would like that as well, right? Somebody who's not part of that club that's, just running everything. But if we can challenge that and change the way America views, soccer, we would love that. But no,
Berhalter tried.
that was awful.
Well, at
That
least
was
he
awful.
said he tried.
He said he tried, but we'll see what happens. What about Pellegrino Matarazzo? What are your thoughts on him? I know we mentioned he's had some success in Germany, but again, not the massive clubs either. What are your thoughts on him, and what could he potentially bring to the table? He is the most qualified American coach at this point.
I would agree with that. He has worked under Julian Nagelsmann as an assistant, so he's worked with a brilliant coach that changed the way Leipzig played, right? I think Nagelsmann's a really good coach, so he learned a lot from that. It would come with a change in formation. I've mainly seen Materazzo play a back three, a lot of wing back play. I've seen him play in a 3-5-2, 3-4-1-2, 3-4-3. So it'll probably be a back three. That's the first thing, which, again, it can fit our player pool because it matters like how he'll adjust to that, but I think it can. A-Rob as a wing back, Des as a wing back suits them better. How will he utilize Reina, Pulisic, Balogun maybe as like a triangle up top? I don't know, but I think that suits.
That might concern me a little bit, right? Tim Ream is potentially aging out. Let's not sugarcoat it. Tim Ream is aging out. If he's on the roster at 26, does he start? Probably not, especially with his move to Charlotte. I'm expecting, one, Father Time to catch up, but two, just the level to drop. Chris Richards still ascending, in my opinion. He's got something to prove still with the U.S. men's national team, but who else is going there? Carter Vickers looked slow. He did not look up to it. We haven't seen enough of Mark McKenzie. We haven't seen Austin Trusty with the national team at all. I would have my concerns about a back three with three center backs. What would you think there?
No, I agree with that in the sense of like we're having issues putting two center backs on the field right now. So you add an extra one. I'm hopeful some will rise. McKenzie possibly going to Bundesliga, being challenged, and then we'll see how he does. Like getting to the Bundesliga doesn't magically make you better.
Right.
We have to see how he does. Trusty was part of the worst defense in the history of the Premier League. So that has to be said. Sure, it's the Premier League, but still.
Yeah,
like
you can stand out a little bit in a positive way, but if it's a failure overall, you're not doing everything right,
Yeah. Yes, like it's not like we can just blame the whole defense and say Trusty was fine. No, he was part of the problem.
He was part of it.
Yeah, it's complicated. I hope we would have some center backs. But remember, sometimes the coach can get the whole to be better than the sum of its parts. If you can get the center backs to, like, these are not horrible center backs by any means. Maybe Leonard Maloney can play center back. We'll see. I look, the state of the U.S. men's national team at the moment is a bit worrisome from a coaching perspective, and even players. I know we have talented, but the goalkeeper situation is not good. Center backs is not as bad as goalkeeper, but it's not great. So it is worrisome. Midfield is fine. We have options up top too, but that sense, we're just going to keep going on circles here and just saying it's not good. So yes, it is a problem, but maybe a back three is a way to adjust it. If you can get them to play better from a tactical perspective, you expose their weaknesses better. It depends on how the coach adjusts to it.
I don't know a ton about his history, but I do know that, if Nagelsmann thinks very highly of him and continues to want him around and take his opinion on different things, I would say that's something that would, at the very least, grab my attention. So I'd be interested in that for sure. Thinking about who's the third one on our list that we talked about, Vieira.
Vieira is an intriguing one. He does tick the box of being an outsider. Like, he's bigger than the players. He's not going to take crap from anyone, and he's going to play the best ones that he can. He, like people say, he was a massive failure in the Premier League. I don't think he was a massive failure. He was okay, like not great, not bad. He made it to a semifinals of Crystal Palace once, for whatever that's worth. We also saw Coventry make it this season, so it happens.
Cup games are weird.
Yeah, Nice, bad, good. There was bad, there was good. Strasbourg was like, never did terrible in Europe, but never did great. In MLS with New York City FC, they improved with him because he took over, I believe, after Jason Kreis. Jason Kreis is a terrible coach, a horrible coach. But there was improvement. So he's not horrible, but not great. So it wouldn't be the worst hire. It wouldn't be a great hire. Vieira, there's a lot of positives with him, a lot of negatives too.
If we're moving on to our next potential candidate, we're talking about Thierry Henry. Originally, when you brought him up, you said you were not, necessarily a big fan of that. Tell me why. Elaborate on your thoughts for him.
The positives with him, let's start with that, is he's an outsider. He is a legend. He's bigger than the players, so that wouldn't be a concern. But he did poor work in MLS for Montreal. We saw them improve right after under Wilfred Nancy. He didn't do well with Monaco in Liga. And some were saying he did very well in the Olympics with the French national team. But again, they probably had the most talented roster. They made it to the final, and they lost to Spain. I wouldn't call that a failure. Getting a silver medal is definitely not a failure, but a success would have been a gold medal. That would have been that was the expectation. So he did okay in the Olympics. So far with 3 jobs that he had as a head coach, fail, and okay. I'm sorry, there's too much evidence pointing towards him not being a good coach. And we talked about like the Cherundolo thing. We have 2 years to go. Henry would not be he'd be way down the list, down.
Do you think if he had a full 4 years, a full cycle, do you think that would potentially make a difference there? I mean, or do you think just he's a great player, a legend of the game, but some people at that level, they can't coach it. They could just do it, and they can't really relate to the players. Do you think that might be the case, or do you think that given a full cycle, he might be able to bridge that gap and grow?
I'm not for hiring him in general. I don't see much, I don't see the many qualifications as a coach. Of course, we're talking as a coach. If you can play forward for us, go ahead, put him there.
Yeah, put him up top.
But I don't see that many. Like, if it's a full cycle, I would be less angry, I guess. I'll be like, okay, let's give him like 12 to 18 months and see where he's at by then. Right now, not a chance. And if it's a full cycle, I would still be against it. I guess maybe I would just be a bit more patient and just like, okay, let's maybe see what he can do, but let's at least like hold him to a high standard that if he's not doing well the first 12 to 18 months, he's out. Yeah. But not really a hire that I would enjoy in general.
I think that's fair, right? Anybody that we hire, I'm personally going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'll back him, and I'll be excited. I'll root for the team. I always want him to succeed, but I would be a little bit more skeptical if they don't have a track record of success and a track record of proving that they can be flexible and can make adjustments and can get, the most out of a team. And, when, like you said, he left Montreal and that team immediately improved afterwards. That doesn't scream that he's getting the most out of them.
So did Monaco, right?
Yeah, so did Monaco. How much better did Monaco get? I have not followed the French league.
I don't remember any much, but let's just put that the Monaco fans and people that I follow Liga and that I talked to just said he was terrible there.
That's fair. We'll leave it at that. I think that's those things that maybe it is. He's just too great as a player. He can't quite coach it. I think that's definitely a possible thing. And then we've kind of hovered around number 5, potentially Hervé Renard. I've heard him more than I've heard almost anybody else outside of Southgate. So tell me about Renard. He's been around the block a little bit with national teams, which I think is a potential positive, but obviously not mass amounts of success everywhere either.
Just before we go to Herb, just so you know, Henry's record with Monaco. Monaco tends to usually be a very good team in France, by the way. Mm-hmm. He was in charge in October of 2018, and he was fired in January of 2019. So it lasted, October, November, to 3 months. Yeah. He was in charge for 20 games. He won 4 games, tied 5, lost 11, scored 15 goals, the team he was in charge, and they conceded 36. I don't know how they did after him. I'm assuming a lot better. Those are not good stats with Monaco and Liga. Yeah. Hervé Renard, outsider, again, kind of important in my opinion, can speak English too, has plenty of experience with national teams, and he's proven that with club, he hasn't done well with club, but national team he has. He won the African Cup of Nations with Zambia. That's a big underdog story. He won it with the Ivory Coast, if I'm not mistaken. That's probably not an underdog story, but still won it. It's also, it's much harder to win the African Cup of Nations with the Ivory Coast than it is to win the Gold Cup with the US, for example. Mm-hmm. So there's that. He has World Cup experience with Morocco, World Cup experience with Saudi Arabia. And people talk about Saudi. He got grouped with Saudi Arabia last World Cup. It's like, yeah, like the team sucks. Like,
There's not a lot of talent in that team.
no, I thought he got 3 more points than he should have in the World Cup, to be honest. Probably should
By
have.
the way, that was an immaculate 3 points too. I mean, the only team to beat Argentina.
Well, the thing was, he made Saudi Arabia look competitive in the World Cup. That's the main thing. The team is not good. Let's just make that clear. It's not a good team. They looked competitive. They gave a hard time to every single team they played. They weren't easy to beat, and they did pull a win against Argentina. Sure, they didn't get out of the group, but who else beat Argentina in the World Cup? No one. So there's a lot that I like about him. He wouldn't be my number one option. Like we said, Pochettino would be far ahead of him, no doubt. But I think Herve would be a good hire. And he's also a guy that wouldn't take crap from the players. We saw him challenge players like Ziyech in the past with Morocco. We also saw accountability from him. I believe when he lost the African Cup of Nations with Morocco in 2019, I don't remember the exact, or 2020, early 2020, he resigned. So he took full responsibility for it and left, unlike, one of our coaches that got grouped at home in the Copa America and still apparently wanted to be in charge. So I think that would be a good hire, Herve Renard. I don't know if they've spoken to him. I would assume they'll at least talk to him. He's available right now, but I don't know if they have.
Okay. And yeah, I could see it, potentially, right? Our camp talks to his camp, but I would imagine he was focused on the Olympics. So maybe true conversations are just now starting with him. But, I think it would be a positive hire overall. Maybe not the absolute peak of what we can do, but positive. Would be something that would be my first impression for sure. So we've gone through 5 probably realistic candidates. Out of everybody that's available, who's your dream hire and why? Who's that top person?
I mean, I would say all the ones we mentioned are realistic, I would say. If we exclude like Klopp, I don't think Tuchel is realistic. I kind of mentioned him. I think that's not very realistic. But Pochettino seems open to coaching the US or England. That's what the reports are saying. He has a strong relationship with Matt Crocker. That definitely helps. So I would say all the ones we mentioned are realistic. We kind of like talked almost about it in that sense. I don't know if I want to. Maybe I would push Herve Renard a bit higher. Like I would probably place him above Thierry Henry. I would place him above Vieira. But I would be totally fine with Materazzo, Herve Renard, Pochettino. To me, all those are good options. And if you go like MLS, I think the only acceptable one would be Wilfred Nancy from the Columbus Crew. Only acceptable option, in my opinion. Wouldn't be ahead of any of the ones I mentioned. I don't even know if I would put him ahead of Vieira right now. He still has a lot to prove, but he's proven to be very competent in Major League Soccer.
What have you seen out of him, out of Nancy?
What have I seen? What in what
Just
sense?
in terms of why do you think he would be competent? Have you seen good in-game adjustments and tactics? Do you like the style of play he likes to use? What's appealing to him?
The style of play is very enjoyable to watch. I don't know if it would work. I don't know if he would be able to implement the same exact system as the Columbus Crew. But Wilfred Nancy, every team he's joined has improved. Montreal improved after he joined, right? They made it to the playoffs. I believe they knocked out Orlando City even under Wilfred Nancy. And then when he left, they went back to where they were when he got there. The Columbus Crew, I believe they missed the playoffs the season before he took over. They won MLS Cup. He made it to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. And then he knocking out some Liga MX giants on the way there, winning away, pulling results away, something I've heard was impossible in CONCACAF, right?
Yeah,
he's done it. He challenged their best player, Cucho Hernandez, and he suspended him, I think, for 3 games or so. And he still has the players' respect. So he just showed to be a very respectable coach, a tough coach. He's adjusted throughout games. His team seems to have the right mentality and a winner. It seems to be a winner, right? I know just one trophy, just the MLS Cup, but making it to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final was a big accomplishment because he didn't have an easy road. It's not like he knocked out MLS teams to make it there. I think he actually knocked out 2 teams from Mexico. I think one of them was even Monterrey. Very tough team.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that, and that's a tough competition for being in CONCACAF, right? You're not necessarily the peak of Europe or South America, but given the talent that you're around, he's probably an underdog in those situations and getting the most out of the team, going up against some some giants in Liga MX for sure.
I might be wrong. I think I'm right on this one. I could look it up, but I'm just going to risk it. I
That's right.
believe Monterrey knocked out Inter Miami with Messi, and then they played Columbus Crew, and Wilfred Nancy's Columbus Crew knocked out the team that knocked out Inter Miami with Messi. So, and getting a result away, I think there's a lot of evidence in Major League Soccer and CONCACAF that he's a competent coach.
Mm-hmm.
I would, since if there was 4 year cycle, I would say give it to Wilfred Nancy. He's one of those where if we had 4 years, I would say let's see what he can do in 2 years, and then if he sucks, we replace him. But I would like to see him also at a higher level, coaching in a top 5 league, seeing how he does. But definitely in MLS, he's proven that he's really good.
Yeah, still just a little bit young in his career as a coach, a little bit green, and we want to see given the fact that we're coming up on the most important tournament, the most important World Cup in U.S. history, and we have to have success. And there's apparently no budget restrictions on our coach. You would like to see something a little bit more established, and I 100% agree with that. I think that while maybe not a bad option, I think that there's better out there. There's more proven track records of success out there. So okay, I can get behind that, especially maybe not this situation, but we can maybe do better, but we can also do worse.
Like we're 2 years roughly away from the World Cup. Let's say 2026 goes by and the next 2 seasons Wilfred Nancy continues to do well in MLS, maybe even gets a job in Europe and does well there too. I would not have an issue if he continues to do well. After the World Cup, we're like, hey, Wilfred Nancy for 4 years here. Let's see how he does. But right now, no, we need to minimize the risk right now. We're too close. We're less than 2 years away from the World Cup. Less.
And we don't have a lot of competitive matches either. So we need the guy as soon as possible. In my mind, I think we need that stability. We need that. If we could do it, I would want it by September. But that's looking less and less likely.
Almost impossible. They're already kind of like saying we're going to have an interim in September. Yeah,
which is a little bit concerning. So, we're just losing time in my book. I think that's a concern for me. So we've talked about our realistic ones, some potentially really good ones. Out of those rumors, out of everything that's out there, worst case scenario, who is it and why?
Oh, worst case scenario, they go through the list and they hire Cherundolo.
That's true. Would you take Cherundolo over Southgate?
Oh Lord, why are you doing this to me?
I gotta ask, because Southgate, he's had quote unquote success, but England has underperformed by the eye test, everything outside of just the final results. I would say that England has underperformed under him. And if you dive into the statistics and look at the talent that he has, I would not want him coaching the U.S. men's national team.
I'd probably go with Cherundolo. It's a bit more uncertain than Southgate. I just think Southgate, we're going to be more or less like Berhalter. England, I don't think they've had success under him. They're going to bring up the numbers of like they made it to this semifinals and that final. But that's like, if you look at the macro, if you look in the micro and you see who he beat to make it there, he pretty much lost every single time he played a team at his level. Not even better, at his level, or a little bit worse. He beat teams that the talent gap was huge, barely sometimes.
And I think that's a concern, especially because in CONCACAF, realistically, there's no team at our level. Mexico's the lowest they've ever been. Canada's probably stronger than they've ever been, but the talent level is not the same. The depth is not the same. We shouldn't drop points to those teams. But I think that if you have a habitual underperformer, that would really concern me. And I agree with you. I think that he has not gotten the most out of a supremely talented England squad.
I don't think he's even gotten look, he was in charge of the 2018 World Cup, the 2020 or 2021 Euros. They changed the year. The 2022 World Cup and the Euros again. Out of these 4, I would say he's done a good job if he had done 2 things that he hasn't done. Beat a team in his level, which he did not do. He lost in the 2018 World Cup. He lost to Belgium twice, and then he lost to Croatia in the semifinals. He lost to Belgium the group stage and third place match. The 2021 Euros, he beat a bunch of teams that were way below them, and then they beat a Germany that was in complete crisis, literally firing Joachim Löw right after. He beat a Denmark that almost had their best player die in the beginning of the competition, like something very traumatic. Then he beat Denmark. played at home these games, and then lost to Italy in the final, an Italian team that failed to qualify to the World Cup right after. So it's not the greatest team. They were in form, they were well coached at the time, but they weren't brilliant by any means. 2022 World Cup, beat Wales, beat Iran, tied the US, which was not good for him. He beat Senegal in the round of 16, which you would fully expect without Sadio Mane. I believe he wasn't playing also. Sadio Mane wasn't playing. And then lost to France. And then in the Euros now, he looked horrendous every single game. Relied like on a Jude Bellingham like late bicycle kick to keep him alive against, I think, Slovakia. And then in the final against Spain, which was the only time he faced a title contender. I'm sorry, the Dutch were not title contenders in the Euros. Faced Spain in the final. I know it was only 2-1, but it could have easily been 3-0. Spain completely outplayed his team. And when it comes to talent, it's pretty close. It's very even. So he's not been a success. No to Southgate. I guess maybe if that's the case, I'll probably lean a bit more towards Cherundolo, and that's not good.
I would completely agree. I think that we know Southgate based on his career. There's more numbers to support what he's doing. We don't know Cherundolo. Maybe he can grow. Maybe he can step up. Maybe he can develop. I think Southgate's already his peak. I don't think Cherundolo's a complete coach yet. And I would be with you. I think that let him try and learn and grow within the program instead of having somebody who's continually proven that they can't get the most out of players and that they can't, elevate their game when they need to. I think that's a big concern. So I'm 100% behind you. I would not want Southgate. I keep hearing those rumors flying just around Twitter and everything. And Matt Crocker obviously has connections just to the English Football Federation, and by extension, I think Southgate's there, and maybe they're having conversations. I don't know, but that worries me a little bit. It does.
I think they would have at least talked. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but I would assume they talked. I would assume so.
I think that's a fair assumption, and we can just worry about it and keep our fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So definitely something to think about. And finally, the last thing I want to talk to you about is just personality traits that we need in a coach.
Whenever you change the leadership of anything in life, it can change the complete vibe of the work environment. It can change how you behave, how all your team. If you get a strong leader, it'll change a lot. Like even let's ignore player selection, roster, and tactics for a second here. Just having a different person there in charge, a new captain for this ship, can change a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just that alone. And then obviously you get into the different ideas and player selection and tactics and approach and in-game management. But ignoring that, just a different leadership, a guy that has a different vibe and just a guy that's a true leader and charisma, and like Berhalter, that alone already has a major impact.
Yeah, I agree. So hopefully we get somebody who has charisma and has that ability to inspire, and the rest of it comes. That's really what I'm looking for, and so hopefully we can find that whenever we do, and however quickly we can. Right? That's where I want to go. Tack, you've answered every single one of my questions, helped educate me a lot on our coaching search and why some.
Well, you know a lot too. You know a lot.
I don't know if I know a lot. I can do a little research, but I'm not so confident in it. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing some knowledge and insight with us, and just helping me grow my knowledge of the team and the game. So everybody, if you haven't already, give Tack a follow on Twitter and Instagram, and then give him a subscribe on your channel as well. It's TacticalManagerTV on YouTube, and what's the handle for Instagram and Twitter?
I think Instagram is also TacticalManagerTV. Twitter is the one I had to flip it because they already had it. So it's like Manager Tactical. I had to flip it because they had it already.
Beautiful. All right. Well, hey, man, thank you again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.